horror stories, out of which the scariest story is number 2. It was a cold autumn night when Sarah decided to take a walk through the old woods near her house. The moon hung low, casting eerie shadows between the gnarled trees. She had heard stories about the woods, how they were haunted by the spirit of a girl who had vanished decades ago. Do you guys like watching horror stories? If so, then comment yes or no and like the videos and subscribe the channel. But Sarah was skeptical, convinced it was just local folklore. As she ventured deeper, a thick fog began to roll in, swallowing the path behind her. She felt a chill creeping up her spine, but she pressed on, determined to explore. The further she walked, the quieter the woods became, until the only sound was her heartbeat echoing in her ears. Suddenly, she heard it, a soft whisper. Sarah, it was her name, clear as day. She paused, heart racing. Who's there? She called, trying to sound braver than she felt. Silence enveloped her, thick and heavy. Sarah, the whisper came again, more insistent this time. She turned, scanning the trees for any sign of movement. Nothing. Just the fog swirling like a living thing. Feeling uneasy, Sarah decided to head back. But as she turned, the path she had taken seemed to vanish, swallowed by the fog. Panic surged in her chest. "Hello?" she shouted, hoping for an answer, but all she got was the rustling of leaves. Then she heard it again, the whisper, but this time it was closer. "Help me," the voice was frail and haunting. Against her better judgment, Sarah followed the sound, curiosity driving her deeper into the darkness. As she moved, the trees loomed larger, their twisted branches reaching out like skeletal hands. She stumbled upon a small clearing, where the fog lifted slightly. In the center stood a dilapidated old well, covered in moss and shadow. The whispers were louder now, swirling around her. "Help me," the voice was pleading, filled with despair. Sarah approached the well, peering into the darkness below. "Who are you?" she called out, her voice trembling. "Find me," the voice echoed back, sending chills down her spine. Without thinking, she dropped a small stone into the well. It plinked against the sides, the sound fading into silence. Suddenly, a cold wind whipped through the clearing, and the whispers turned frantic. "Don't leave me," they cried, filling her with dread. Sarah took a step back, feeling the weight of countless eyes watching her from the shadows. Panicked, she turned to run, but the fog thickened around her, disorienting her. She stumbled, her foot catching on something unseen. As she fell, she heard a chilling laugh, echoing through the trees. Desperate, she clawed her way to her feet and sprinted blindly, heart racing. The whispers turned to screams, filling her mind, drowning out her thoughts. "Help me. You can't leave." At last, she broke through the fog and found the path. She ran, lungs burning, until she reached the edge of the woods. Gasping for breath, she glanced back, half expecting to see the spirit. The night was still again, the woods silent. But as she turned to leave, she heard one last whisper, softer this time, "I'll find you." Sarah ran home, locking the door behind her, but the chill lingered. She tried to shake it off, to forget the night's terror. Yet every night after, as darkness fell, she could hear the faintest whisper, just beyond the edge of sleep. "Help me." The woods were never far away, and the whispers never truly left. On a stormy night, Mark drove down a winding road, rain pelting his windshield. He was searching for the old Anderson house, a place long rumored to be haunted. Local legends whispered of strange noises and ghostly apparitions, but Mark, a skeptic, was determined to prove it was just a story. As he parked his car, lightning illuminated the house, a decrepit structure shrouded in shadows, its windows like hollow eyes watching him. Gathering his courage, he stepped out into the rain, the wind howling around him. The front door creaked open with a gentle push, revealing a dark foyer lined with dust-covered furniture. Inside, The air was thick with a musty smell. Mark switched on his flashlight, its beam cutting through the gloom. He wandered through the rooms, each one filled with the remnants of a forgotten life, faded photographs, cobweb-covered chairs, and a broken clock that ticked ominously in the silence. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from upstairs, causing Mark to jump. "Hello?" he called, his voice trembling slightly. Silence was his only answer. Curiosity piqued, he made his way up the staircase, each step creaking under his weight. At the top, he found a long hallway lined with doors. The sound of whispering floated through the air, chilling him to the bone. He approached the first door and opened it slowly, revealing an empty room. But the whispering grew louder, as if beckoning him. "Come play with us." Heart racing, Mark closed the door and moved to the next. This one swung open with a sudden gust, revealing a child's room, toys scattered across the floor. A doll lay face down, its glassy eyes staring blankly. He felt a cold breeze brush past him, and the whispers returned, more urgent now. "Help us, help us." Panic clawed at Mark as he stumbled back, but before he could turn to leave, the door slammed shut. He pounded on it, but it wouldn't budge. The whispers intensified, filling the room with a cacophony of voices. "You can't escape." Desperate, Mark searched for a way out, his flashlight flickering. The walls seemed to close in on him, shadows shifting and creeping. He caught a glimpse of something in the corner, a figure, pale and ethereal, staring at him with hollow eyes. "Why won't you help us?" it whispered, voice echoing with sorrow. Mark's heart raced. He realized the legends were true. The spirits of the house were trapped, crying out for aid. "What do you want from me?" he shouted, fear and regret flooding his voice. "Free us." With a surge of determination, Mark rushed to the window and pushed it open. The wind howled louder, but he shouted into the night, "I'll help you." The whispers turned into a chorus of relief, enveloping him in a chilling embrace. In that moment, the walls trembled, and the figure faded, a look of gratitude in its eyes. Mark felt a warmth wash over him as the whispers began to quiet, the oppressive weight lifting from the room. But just as he turned to leave, the door swung open once more, and he was met with darkness. Mark dashed down the stairs, the house trembling around him. The front door flew open, and he sprinted into the storm. As he reached his car, he glanced back. The house stood silent, but a soft glow emanated from the windows. He knew he had freed them, but at a cost. Driving away, he could still hear their whispers in the wind, a haunting reminder that some stories are never truly over. And on stormy nights, if you listen closely, you might still hear them calling out for help. On a chilly October night, Emma settled into her old house, nestled on the outskirts of town. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows, while rain pattered against the roof. She had recently moved in, excited for a fresh start, but the house had an unsettling air. Shadows flickered in the corners of her vision, and she often felt like someone was watching her. That night, after a long day of unpacking, Emma decided to unwind with a book. As she settled onto the couch, she heard the faint creak of floorboards above. She paused, listening intently. The sound echoed again, followed by a soft whisper, barely audible. "Emma." Chills ran down her spine. She tried to dismiss it as the house settling, but her heart raced. Gathering her courage, she called out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" Silence answered, heavy and oppressive. Determined to prove herself wrong, Emma grabbed a flashlight and ventured upstairs. The air grew colder as she climbed the creaking staircase, each step echoing through the darkness. At the top, she paused, peering down the dimly lit hallway. The whispers returned, swirling around her. "Emma, come to me." Feeling drawn to the source, she followed the voice to a door at the end of the hall. It was slightly ajar, darkness spilling out like a living thing. Taking a deep breath, she pushed the door open, her flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. Inside, the room was empty except for an old rocking chair, swaying gently as if someone had just left it. Emma felt a rush of cold air and stepped back, heart pounding. Suddenly, the chair stopped moving, and a shadow flickered in the corner of her eye. "Who's there?" she demanded, her voice trembling. The room felt alive with tension, and the whispers grew louder, more frantic. "Help me." Emma turned to flee, but the door slammed shut, trapping her inside. Panic surged as she rattled the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. The whispers morphed into agonized cries, echoing through her mind. "Help us, help us." Desperate, Emma sank to the floor, clutching her head. Just then, the flashlight flickered and died, plunging her into darkness. Heart racing, she scrambled to her feet, feeling her way along the wall. The whispers turned into a cacophony, drowning out her thoughts. Suddenly, a cold hand gripped her shoulder. Emma screamed, spinning around to face nothing. The room was empty again, but the air felt thick with malice. She knew she had to escape. With renewed determination, she kicked the door with all her strength. It burst open, and she stumbled into the hallway, breathless. The whispers followed her, haunting and relentless. "You can't leave." Emma dashed down the stairs, heart pounding, but the shadows seemed to reach for her. Just as she reached the front door, it slammed shut with a thunderous bang. "Let me out," she shouted, frantically pulling at the doorknob. In that moment, the whispers grew deafening, a storm of voices surrounding her. "You belong to us." With one final push, she threw herself against the door, and it flew open. She tumbled outside into the rain-soaked night, gasping for breath. The oppressive weight lifted as she ran down the path, the whispers fading into the night. But as she reached the end of her driveway, she glanced back at the house. A figure stood in the window, watching her, its eyes glowing with a sinister light. Emma shivered and turned away, sprinting into the darkness, knowing she could never return. And in that old house, the whispers continued, waiting for the next soul to answer their call.